Good afternoon and welcome to this virtual sunshine meeting on Tuesday, July 21st, 2020. The clerk can certify the time. I want to welcome those that are in attendance for this virtual session, sunshine meeting. Let us have the invocation and ask Vice Mayor if he would do the Pledge of Allegiance afterwards. Let us have the invocation. Our Father and God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your blessings. Continue, God, to watch over the city. Give us wisdom, knowledge, understanding. Do those things which are pleasing in your sight. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen.
Mayor,
Vice Mayor.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Attorney, if you would give us the protocols.
Yes, Commissioner Kelly, pursuant to Executive Order number 20-69 issued by the Office of Government Communications, Media Technology, such as telephonic or video conferencing as provided by Section 120.54 5B2 Florida statutes. The members of the City Commission appearing remotely for this meeting are Vice Mayor Davis and Commissioner Kelly. This virtual meeting is authorized by the Governor of the State of Florida, and an opportunity that notice can be found by contacting the City of Opa-locka Clerk's office. Thank you, Commissioner Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Attorney. And since it's on there, Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment?
Commissioner Kelly, there are no public comments at this time.
Thank you. I want to move right into the discussion item. And I thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor, for consenting for this meeting to discuss the proposed park summit. As I've been saying for over a year now, the city needs to look at parks and recreation and leisure services for our entire community. And as it is now, in my opinion, over the last 2 years, we function with part of the diversity of our changing community. Of course, that includes preparing for the new norm of COVID-19. And so it's that in mind why I wanted to have a sunshine meeting to begin that discussion. And the Vice Mayor, who I know has weighed in on some of the meetings, wanted to be a part of that. And so I wanted to have that discussion with the manager staff and park staff. And I know we've kind of been preempted from the last meeting with some of the requests for information for parks and et cetera. But we have been working to put this together now for about 3 or 4 months. So I wanted to go ahead with that because I know we want to work towards a common goal. And so I wanted to just say that in the beginning. And Mr. Vice Mayor, if you got any open remarks you want to make, and then we'll get right into the discussion of the Park Summit. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, just to echo your same concerns, we've seen, our parks kind of decline over the years. So my hope, as far as the conversation today, was to put together something, I guess, put a considerable amount of attention to maintenance and just upkeep of our parks, because I don't know, how we're building that in, but we have, in my opinion, facilities that have, that are not really that old, and they, are not in the best shape or either underutilized. So I would hope, we also, also look at that going forward as well. But again, thank you, Commissioner, for hosting this and taking the lead on this. You and I both, have been, champions of parks and recreational programs in the city, over the past years. So I look forward to working with you on this.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. And I know the manager is on.
For allowing me the opportunity to make comment during this very important meeting. The manager's office, along with our budget department, has been making great strides, gets the necessary budgetary allotment to get work done and completed. So we have the money that's going to be set to the side. You all vote on that tomorrow.
Said it's ironic how it all moved kind of quickly. I know we've been talking about putting together this park summit for a while and actually looking to try to do something in the month of August. I believe you said you wanted to try to do it. I had a couple of dates in mind. And I know, as the Vice Mayor said, we've got to look not only at the services, but also the maintenance and the upkeep as well. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to put together this summit in order to get engaged ideas of not only the community, but to hear from park staff, other professionals in the field as we work towards a comprehensive plan for our parks going forward, not only in the short term, but in the long term. And so hopefully we're looking at, again, I believe, Mr. Manager, I don't remember the date, but sometime in August. I know it's kind of moving because of COVID-19, but sometime in August to have that summit. And what I kind of look at as the summit is trying to really bring the community together to have a discussion on what our parks and park systems ought to look like and be about, because before you can really get to a master plan, you got to have an idea of what you want to put even in an RFP. So I want to kind of frame it around that discussion. And Mr. Vice Mayor, feel free to chime in some dollars for some upcoming potential things, but I'm really looking not just today, but in the long run. So having said that, Mr. Manager, if Mr. Brown could give us, I guess, an update or an overview as the Vice Mayor was concerned about the maintenance and upkeep, I'd like to hear that.
Good afternoon, everyone. And first and foremost, to Commissioner Kelly and Commissioner Davis, I'm glad to hear about the summit. I'm glad everybody taking an ownership in Parks and Recreation, because it's just not the director's responsibility, it's the whole city and commission's responsibility to make sure it moves forward. I think it's a needed addition to the progress of Parks and Recreation. But I can tell you, over the last couple of days, meeting with the budget director, we've been talking about infrastructure money being used to enhance the Parks Department. Ingram, Shabundi, Mr. Bob, if he's on, he can go into details of it. But where we stand right now, as far as the programming in parks, football has been canceled this year for youth footballs. That's our biggest draw in the community. So we won't be having football. So that frees up some dollars within our budget to do some additional things. I don't know what's going to happen after football season, but as of the mandate is right now with Miami-Dade County, we're still under the old mandate, 10 kids in a facility, no outside activities. And if you have outside activities, it still must be distance oriented with the community. So we're at liberty right now of the commissioners and the mayor as to where do we go forward. I don't think that's something that we can, as a department, decide on that factor, because like we said, like you said, Commissioner Kelly, the virus is one of the things that we're dealing with right now, and which has also hit this department kind of hard as well. So I look forward for anything and everything that the commission can do to help progress this parks department. We got some things in mind, and we'll discuss that after Bob can tell you what the dollar's going to be, and some things that we discussed that I want to do was in the parks. I also discussed that, during the course of this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. And along that same lines, and I'm quite sure you've been a part of park summits in the past to kind of bring, the stakeholders together and set some kind of framework going forward. What would you say in terms of putting together a summit are the folks who we need or should have at the table, in your opinion, to make it successful, to get where we need to go down the road for the future?
What I think we should do in the summit, and we're leaning toward nonprofits, and doing RFPs. I think once we have that summit, I think anyone wants to be an investment in the city of Opa-locka with different type of programs that can meet the needs of the city, I think they should be invited to it, so they can get an idea as opposed to what we're looking for if we choose to go nonprofit routes to enhance the parks. We don't have the staff to do the things we need to do, but there are some nonprofits that can assist us. A lot of nonprofits want funding. We don't have the funding to give certain nonprofits. A lot of nonprofit has lost funding. So I think by getting nonprofits involved, we'll know where we stand as far as nonprofits that can help us, instead of just holistically putting the RP out, and then everybody wants to submit applications. Then there are no dollars in the coffer for them to program here. Once we do the summit, we can see what they bring to the table. Are they financially able to assist us? And if not, then we have to go other channels, making sure Park and Recreation itself can handle the load of this community, because it's a lot to be done. So
could you speak to what the Vice Mayor was mentioning earlier about the maintenance and infrastructure? I mean, because to me, I guess that would be part of it as well.
Yes, and your upkeep and your look of your apartment, your parks department is an eye catcher. It's either a positive or negative. We have a negative look right now, and to maintain these parks, you know, if people see parks looking very jubilant, they'll be enticed to come in and be inquisitive about it. But when they see overgrown grass in our department, they just keep on driving because they feel like we're not doing anything, but we are. So the upkeep and the maintenance is important. In the past, we had the maintenance department in Parks and Recreation. We sort of like maintain our facilities that way. But, you know, with the 5 years struggle that we had, we don't have them anymore. But without the parks being updated, maintained, it's just not a good look. So that's the number one priority we need to do, is make these parks look like a park, not a parking lot.
Mr. Vice Mayor, you want to chime in there?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. To Mr. Brown, what would be your recommendation as far as like, I guess filling in the gap, as far as maintenance and
Public Works is overloaded right now. I mean, we can get 1 or 2 part-time employees that's under the Park and Recreation that we can put the kids for after school, you know, when school is in. It's a big burden on this department, and we just can't do it with, you know, 4 working employees. So I would recommend we that nature.
And that would be for all our park facilities, correct?
Everybody. That way we got control. We can't wait when Public Works have a downtime and they can come and cut. We can put a schedule together, and we can make it happen. We made it happen. Back in the days, we had the park rangers at one time. They worked closely with the park, so they actually oversaw what we was doing, but they don't necessarily have to be the park rangers. They can be park staffing with the proper equipment to maintain the facilities.
Okay, yeah, that was my my hope, because like I said, I remember when we had, I guess, more maintenance hands in the parks department, and you know, I guess we were better with upkeep and just keeping up with the, you know, regular kind of day-to-day maintenance issues. But you know, since that's been taken away because of budget constraints, so just wanted to explore you know, what options, if any, I guess exist to kind of, because it makes no sense to invest, in my opinion, so heavily in our parks and don't protect the investment, which is ultimately keeping up with the upkeep and that sort of thing, which is kind of how we ended up with, you know, 2 of our most popular parks down. So, you know, I'll be in support of, you know, any type of maintenance plan, or, you know, provided it's fiscally responsible moving forward.
One of the things that if there is such a positive with COVID-19 and our parks being component discussion with nonprofit, Vice Mayor, as you mentioned, the maintenance component, in anything related to the facilities themselves. I heard you, Mr. Brown, say that you're talking with Anthem about dollars, what have you. But I noticed in a lot of the park systems now, even with your playgrounds, with the we need to look at that as well. And again, Vice Mayor, you can chime in on how you see it. I really just want to lay a groundwork that the commission and the manager can look at when I think of a park summit. And again, I preface by saying, at some point you'll get to the point of a master plan, but you don't start there, because you got to be able to tell them what you want, even when you create that RFP to do it. So we know we're looking at nonprofits, we're looking at a maintenance component. I don't know the latest design or technology for playground systems themselves, integrated with whatever new technology is out there. But to me, all that needs to be a part of a summit discussion. I'll let you weigh in, Mr. Vice Mayor, but I think that's part of how I would look at it, and obviously the commission would weigh in on it and give the manager directions. And a perfect example is what you have now with the Culture Arts Building, which we still have not really told the manager what we ought to want to do with it, but that needs to be part of a process as well. You got any thoughts on that, Mr. Vice Mayor?
Yes, Commissioner, thank you. As it relates to, I guess, putting something comprehensive together, I mean, if we're going to outsource it ultimately to a third party, I think we might need to move maybe more in the direction of an RFQ process, simply because we could kind of see, like what's out there, as far as a submission from our nonprofit entities that want to partner with the city. So just having them, putting it out there, having them submit, what they can provide for the city. And I think us making a collective decision, like you alluded to earlier, as a commission, I think it'll be the best direction to move in. I guess as far as like any, the infrastructure and the maintenance and all those kind of questions are up for the manager. Me, for one, I would like to see, I guess, how those funds are. Like, I know the mayor, he alluded to something about like redirecting some of the programming dollars because we were going, let's do it. But what does it look like? You know what I mean? Like, what are we taking away? What are we improving? And then when we get back to a new normal.
From where I look at it along the same lines, we've got to kind of clear define. Mr. Manager, if you're still on, and just from your experience in other places, when you have you been a part of park summits and how that's been laid out, and your thoughts on how putting together based on our dollars and where you see our needs assessed, even though you've only been here a short time?
Sure, thank you. First, I have been a part of a couple park summits in my time in my career, and typically you want to bring people to the table that are able to provide a wide range of services or guidance to the city. So, for example, I would have somebody at the table from our social service agency, both dealing with all classes of social service related tasks. Social service agency dealing with seniors, social service agency dealing with low income and heating and lighting assistance. And then other people that are well known in the area as far as how the park operation runs. I would confer with you and the vice mayor on that, and basically maybe ask whatever other municipalities out there that we want to kind of mimic or see they have a successful park program, invite them to the table to, number one, open up their line of communication.
Okay, so were you finished, Mr. Manager?
Yes.
Yeah, that kind of sounds like some of the plans that summits that I've been involved in. I actually, we hosted one here many years ago where we, and just to give you an idea, and any of you can chime in. We did one, I guess, when I first got into office as mayor. We did it on a Saturday. Obviously, we're in person. We did it on a Saturday, and we basically segmented it into segments. We had the social service component. Then we had a section in the afternoon for the community to be engaged, to give us their thoughts and what have you. And then we also had the what we call the resource or finance side of potential nonprofits, organizations who could provide resources and or to the city. And it ended up, of course, with the discussion from the manager commission on everything we've heard. And then they put that together into a document. And then we went out and actually made the decision on, as the vice mayor said, RFQs, RFPs, and how we will go forward. And I think that's kind of the same way we ought to look at this potentially, but definitely make sure we engage the community as part of that process. And then I know in the short term, there are things we want to do. That's kind of how I want to suggest or throw out there, if you will, for all of you, how the summit would work and kind of leaning on people. I know the county would be definitely willing to send someone to be at that session, if you will. We will contact some of the other cities that have done some innovative things with parks, to have them a part of that particular segment. And Vice Mayor, what I'm thinking, kind of like I just said, just a rough draft thinking. You start at 9 a.m., from 9 to, let's say, 10:15 on the social services side, like the manager mentioned, for seniors and all those kind of things. And you have a component for the nonprofits that you would invite them and give them 10 minutes or whatever, do a presentation on what they would offer, bring to the table. You have a segment maybe in the after, later on with the community, where you hear from the community what they'd like to see in park, recreation, what services they think we should do. You have that other component, as was mentioned by yourself, with the maintenance, how we upkeep, doing whatever, even with the new norm. And of course, parks and the ideas the manager may have, they of course would chime in, potential programming, COVID-19, how that's all changed, and then end up with a working document from all of that that will be compiled with the manager of Parks and Recreation, that will be given to the commission to say, here's what has come out of the summit, here are the contacts, here are the resources, and the commission could decide, as you said, RFP, RFQ, and you work towards if the desired commission, an overall master plan, which we know still takes a lot of time to really develop that. That's not some overnight, and that's a commitment of some major dollars. But that's kind of how I want to suggest that we look at the Park Summit. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the Vice Mayor, and then the manager's thoughts on it, or Mr. Brown, whomever, going forward.
Thank you, Commissioner. I mean, that's pretty much spot on with my vision for the summit. I think that will work fine. And then also, as long as we build in enough time and opportunity for the community to provide input, I think that will also be impactful as well. I guess as far as the RFQ, RFP process, that won't really be involved in it. In the actual summit, I guess that's something more of an afterthought or after action that the commission can take. So, I mean, I'm pretty much in agreement. We're on the same page, Commissioner. So,
well, can I ask you a question? Because I know you've been involved with the nonprofit side for a long time. Yep. In engaging that, or should we maybe open it up to more based on what we think we might need? And that's not an answer you got to give right now, just something to think about, because I know you've been involved in that, because, you have everybody want to be involved, but you want to try to put it in a time frame and a concept where we think that our needs, and I guess Parks and Recreation or the manager can weigh in to it. But I'm thinking, like I said, a Saturday, 9, finishing up somewhere around 3, with time, broken down. And Mr. Manager, when the Vice Mayor finished, I guess you can weigh in, or Mr. Brown, if you have any thoughts on that structure.
Yeah, that was my kind of thinking too. If we could have something along those lines. So, Mr. Manager.
Did you hear me, Mr. Mayor? Mr. Vice Mayor? Mr. Vice Mayor, did you hear me?
No, I didn't hear you. Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
No, I'm sorry. I said I fully support that format. I think that would work out to be more productive, and I think will work out very well.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with the format as is, and of course, the opportunity to be extended to the rest of the commission, so they will, be subject to the same presentations, as well as, have opportunity to provide feedback. And I think it's a good starting point as far as, just getting things, kind of going, and at least putting the first foot forward as far as, what our parts, the manager has, I guess, ideal staff, or he would be preparing it himself, or how that would come to fruition. But I would like to hear his feedback.
Ms. Lawson to assist me in kind of getting that together, so it can be properly documented, memorialized, and distributed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Manager.
Mr. Manager, I think Mr. Anthem is on. I don't know if you want him to say anything, what have you, because I can't see him, but I know I heard that he was on the call. Does he have any thoughts he wanted to add?
Mr. Anderson?
I'm not sure if Mr. Anthony.
Oh, I thought he was.
He's listening to via YouTube. He's not a part of the meeting right now.
Oh, okay. I thought I heard that he was on the call. Okay, well, Mr. Manager, I guess if you have any thoughts, you can relay them to us. As it relates to the maintenance side and infrastructure side, just as a general question, Mr. Austin, since you're there, the Vice Mayor mentioned about the maintenance. I know there's some things that you projected or want to do temporarily, but in your years of service, what have you, a lot of cities do have a separate maintenance division, if you will, for parks, what have you. How does that use
Public Works as a component to parks enhancement and maintenance. Mr. Brown was right along the lines where he has full control, especially if he's having an upcoming event. He could task the guys to clean a specific park and get it ready for such an event, whereas the Public Works is shorthanded in providing that type of service on an ongoing basis for our parks. Right now, we're just basically doing the basics at our parks, and it needs a lot more to keep them in pristine condition. So I would vote that we get some part-time employees at the minimum to try and answer that need. Now, if I could offer a suggestion for the programming of the parks, it would be best served if we could also put out an RFI, request for information, to get some letters of intent from nonprofits and other professional park services. We could review those letters of intent. We know that those people will not respond if they're not committed to providing such a service to the city of Opa-locka. And then that could be a part of your park summit, along with the other groups that you've previously mentioned. That also works pretty well in getting services. And to the best of my knowledge, you could get services that we haven't even thought about to come into our park facilities and provide necessary services.
You said that's RFI.
RFI, yes.
So you would do an RFI to just to determine who you would have as a part of the summit?
Yes, have organizations provide letters of intent. The letters of intent would be based on providing park services and how they would provide it at no cost to the city, or if it comes with an income to the city or things of that nature. That's some way of seeing how you could best manage the services that you would offer to the community, if it would be at cost or if it would be provided as a nonprofit submission.
Normally, just to get that information, and we were trying to not get entangled with the whole budget process and those meetings, et cetera. That's why August was kind of looked at as the time frame to have the summit, so it wouldn't get into our budget hearings and all of those kind of things. So that would definitely push it back. I don't think we could qualify for some kind of emergency process just for that one. I don't believe. Could we, Madam Attorney? I don't think that would meet any criteria, would it?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, I don't think it'd meet some kind of emergency. Okay. Any thoughts on that, Vice Mayor, or Mr. Manager, for that matter?
Well, from my perspective, I mean, 25 days? Not really a short time. I mean, we can extend it or kind of, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of short in my opinion, Commissioner.
Only reason I said that because 25 days takes us into September. We got the budget hearings going on and all of that process that's going to be time consuming. and then just trying to get folks to be able to participate, because you're kind of in the middle of school being started in some form, and it was a lot more challenging maybe to get folks. Manager had kind of mentioned about August, because it's kind of much more easier than getting into September when you got the budget process going on. I understand the intent of the RFI to get a sense, but I think you could still maybe invite nonprofits or whatever to just kind of give us an overview.
Commissioner, if I could go real quick.
Go ahead.
The RFI, I mean, could we do that like at a separate process? It seems to be the RFI is more tied to, I guess, more of the long-term strategic vision, right? Like when you get the intent of services that we may or may not provide. I think really what we're trying to do with the summit is just kind of get our parks and rec program and kind of off the ground like as of now. So in my opinion, maybe we shouldn't focus on the RFI. Like I said, the RFQ should be, sufficient enough in my opinion. Then later on, maybe we could go through that process when we have more of a long-term strategic conversation.
Okay, all right. Any thoughts, Mr. Manager? I want to try to wrap up in the next couple of minutes.
No, I agree with everything that we've discussed in the direction we're trying to go. Staff is prepared to do budgetary estimates to get things going. We already provided preliminary budgetary estimates on all the parks based on just feedback we've gotten in general. I look forward to this park summit. I think we need to have it sooner than later so we can kind of lock in numbers and work on moving forward for the next FY.
Well, Mr. Manager, I don't have it in front of me. I know you had given me a couple of possible dates, and I really don't know what they were. I know they're in August. Do you remember what they were, or do you need to recheck your notes and let us know later?
So I know we're looking at a weekend, correct?
Yes, we're looking at a Saturday. We're talking about, like I said, a 9 to 3 or something, broken down into the components we just mentioned. And I know we talked about August because we didn't want to get into the September with the budget and all of that. So I don't remember what Saturday specifically.
So I gave Commissioner, I gave a series of dates: the 8th, the 15th, and the 22nd. I don't think we picked.
Oh, okay. Well, could we, Mr. Vice Mayor, I guess tentatively look at the 22nd? That gives us more time, potentially for that summit. And of course, I know the clerk will poll with the commission or what have you.
Yeah, that works for me, Commissioner.
22nd good for you? If we can look at on the 22nd, starting somewhere, like I said, about 9, going to about 3 or what have you, and break it up again to the components that I've heard mentioned: social services, the maintenance component, the nonprofit component, the citizen component, and of course, inviting other entities, agencies, county, and maybe someone from other cities that can share with their process and what they've done or are doing. Then kind of a wrap up, discussion with the commission in terms of how we go from there. But I think that'll give the staff a framework, because by then we'll have a sense of whatever we're working on now, ongoing, that we can incorporate that, and then going forward, you'll have a better idea, as you said, Mr. Vice Mayor, RFI, RFQ, RF, whatever, for the commission to look at. I do know that it's a long-term goal, and like I said, talking about a park master plan, what have you, is a long-term plan. I won't even be here, but I do want to make sure that at least things are started to address with a long-term effort of making our dynamics that can enhance our recreational diversity in the community. So that's kind of how I envision it, and how I wanted to discuss with you, since you had mentioned about it. So, Mr. Manager, I think that's how we would look at it. The Vice Mayor, I'm quite sure he has more thoughts, or you have more thoughts, and we can put together some kind of draft document, and then my colleagues, obviously they can weigh in if they think something needs to be added. And then it's time to reach out to your staff and all of our connections to get folks to actually be a part of the summit. And they will know their time frame. Your time frame is this time, you have this much time, and so it stays moving. Obviously it'll be recorded, and then we can work on that end document that will be produced. So that's kind of how I look at the next steps. I'm open if anyone else thinks of how we ought to approach it. Please let me hear it. Clerk, the attorney, obviously Mr. Vice Mayor, the manager. Anyone else?
On something that Mr. Austin mentioned, the RFI. So the RFI is request for information. It's market research. I think it's still a great idea, and I don't think that the RFI is subjected to the 25-day requirement, the request for information just for market research. So I think you can still do that if you want to, and you don't have to have a 25-day time limit on that. I don't know if the attorney can verify, but the request for information is not solicitation of services.
Okay, well, I had asked that question. I think both the clerk and the attorney weighed in that it did take 25 days. I don't know, so I'll defer to them because they're the
Well,
first
yeah,
on
I
that.
want to correct I would just, Mr. Kelly, Commissioner Kelly, if I can, I want to correct the record. I did not say anything about 25 days. I'm not exactly sure if you all are all talking about the same type of procurement vehicle. So, I didn't try to get into the weeds of what are you really wanting to do in terms of the different types of procurement vehicles. It wasn't clear what you were trying to do, and everybody was saying different types of things to adhere to a process that would give you a reasonable amount of time to even figure that out. So, my response was hardly a response related to anything that had to do with the type of procurement that you were.
I wanted to say similar to what the city, I didn't confirm the 25 days because my role is only dealing with submitting the advertisement. And I did mention that if it did require the 25 days, which I'm not sure on that it would automatically push it into the end of October or September. But I did not confirm that it needed to be the 25 days minimum.
Okay, well, that's something we can look at. I think as the Vice Mayor mentioned, for what we're trying to do, that's still a step maybe down the road. And I'll speak to anyone else on kind of the structure in terms of the next step. Mr. Vice Mayor, any thoughts on that?
Yes, just some final thoughts. As far as social services is concerned, for Parks and Recreation Departments, you got the Children's Trust, you have, various funders. And as we begin to come more current with our audits and ultimately have put our better financial picture, we've always been looked at as kind of, a black sheep when it comes to funding and youth programs in the Miami-Dade community. So, I for one would want them to be a part of that conversation, let them know the new direction that we're going in, and that, and the various changes to our financial picture that I think would benefit us in the long run.
Well, any of those that you think should be a part, just, let the clerk know so that we can make sure it's a part of whatever document we come up. And before we actually send it out, we may need to do another sunshine or something to just finalize. We need to just get started to be able to contact the various components and put this into place we want to do. So now that we have kind of a date, and hopefully our other colleagues will be available for the 22nd, we have a starting point to start to work on putting the framework together with the social service pieces, the maintenance, and anyone that you feel should be a part of that discussion. Obviously we'll weigh in on that. I think that's the next steps. And then once we get kind of a framework, I have the clerk, subject to the manager seeing it and yourself, we'll kind of put out, and then we can start filling in the time frames and those presentations and those kind of things. And also allow us enough time to make sure that the community has an opportunity. I know we've been challenged with this getting the input in 2 hours before. And I know we're working on trying to do the Zoom to get them involved in the meeting. So since we're talking basically another month, maybe we will have come to that technology point. But definitely want to engage the residents. I even thought about for the summit, I know the one I did before, we actually created a little simple survey that we just put out in the community, but we didn't have Facebook back then, but put out to say what you want to see in the community, what you like to see for whatever as well, that can be helpful. So people will know we're really trying to address parks and recreation, leisure services. So that's something else. So we'll work towards that end. I think that's the next step. Mr. Manager or Mr. Brown, anyone else, any other final comments? Got it.
Commissioner, I have no comments. I'm ready to get this done. I'm motivated and
doing something, but maintaining what we do going forward and appropriating the right dollars and getting the resource that can really make our parks and leisure services all that it can be. So thank you all very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor, for your efforts, Mr. Manager, all the staff. Thank you again. And I guess if nothing else, that will conclude this meeting, and have a good day. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner.